What happens when a corrupt detective thinks he's untouchable, only to find out the quiet woman on the witness stand is a federal agent who's been watching him for months? This is the true story of justice served, not with a gavel, but with a badge. The courtroom was nearly empty, but that didn't matter. The people who needed to be there were seated exactly where they had to be. Judge Arlo Kendrick sat stiffly behind the bench, tapping a pen against his legal pad with the quiet tension of a man who suspected the case before him was about to take an unexpected turn. In the left row, Detective Kyle Renshaw leaned back with all the arrogance of a man who had made this courtroom his playground for years. His pinstriped gray suit fit perfectly. His tie was knotted just loose enough to say, "I'm not here to impress anyone, I run this place." And then she walked in. Mariah Tillman entered the courtroom like a whisper, but one that carried weight. She was honey brown skinned, no makeup, no earrings, just a calm confidence dressed in olive and gray. No one turned their head at first. She looked like someone's aunt, maybe a quiet neighbor from a modest block. Just another witness to be dismissed. But Mariah wasn't here to be dismissed. "Miss Tillman, please take the stand," the clerk called. She walked forward without hesitation. No fidgeting. No fake smile. Her eyes scanned the room with calm calculation. When she took her seat, Renshaw glanced at her, barely interested. Leaning toward his defense attorney, he chuckled loud enough for nearby attendees to hear, probably pulled her off the block. "This ought to be quick." Mariah folded her hands neatly in her lap. "Miss Tillman," the defense attorney began, half bored, "can you describe your relationship to the defendant or anyone involved in this case?" "I have no personal relationship," she replied evenly. "But I know of him." "And what exactly did you witness on April 3rd outside the corner of Shields and Maple?" "I was there," she said, leaning in slightly, "on assignment. I observed Detective Renshaw interact with two minors outside a liquor store. One had a backpack. Renshaw searched it without cause and pocketed a small amount of cash. He let them walk free." Snickers rippled through the room, except for Renshaw. He had shifted, just slightly. "You're saying you saw this happen?" the attorney scoffed. "Yes. And I have it on video." Now, the courtroom stopped. Renshaw's smirk didn't vanish, but his eyes twitched. The judge raised an eyebrow. "What kind of assignment were you on, Miss Tillman?" Mariah said nothing at first. Then she reached calmly into the inside of her jacket and pulled out a slim leather case. She held it up and flipped it open for the court to see. "Special Agent Mariah Tillman. United States Drug Enforcement Administration." The room didn't fall into silence. It fell into something heavier, a shock that silenced breath itself. Renshaw sat up like the floor had cracked beneath him. "For the last 8 months," she continued, "I've been working undercover in Roosevelt Heights. My mission was to gather evidence against a suspected drug network being protected from within the Fresno Police Department." She turned and faced Renshaw directly. "Detective Renshaw was one of my primary subjects." The judge lifted a hand before the courtroom could erupt. "Order. One more word and I'll clear the room." Mariah didn't flinch. "You remember me now, don't you?" she said, voice steady. "I was the woman you stopped twice without reason. The one whose house your partner accidentally raided. The one who watched you take money and drugs like it was a hobby." Renshaw's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. But to understand how this moment happened, the badge, the exposure, the trap, you had to rewind. Back 8 months. To a woman sitting in a hot car in Fresno with no makeup, no badge, and a new name, Raina Lawson. Heat in Fresno wasn't just a matter of weather. It settled into your clothes, crept into your lungs, and clung to your skin. And on that August day, inside a sun-beaten sedan with tinted windows, Mariah Tillman, now known as Raina Lawson, sat parked outside a crumbling liquor store on Brawley Avenue, sweating through her bleach-stained tank top, jeans stiff with wear. Her eyes weren't on the street. They were on the file in the passenger seat. Kyle Renshaw. Decorated officer. Multiple commendations. Community awards. But beneath the ribbons and press clippings. Complaints. Lost body cam footage. Missing evidence. Arrests that never held up in court. Every red flag had one thing in common: they vanished when Renshaw's name got too close. Mariah had gone undercover before, twice in Oakland, once in Modesto. But this was different. There were no gang tattoos or cartel codewords to infiltrate this time. This was a rot growing under the badge. One the DEA couldn't touch with a subpoena. They needed someone inside the decay. Let me be blunt, her supervisor had said just days earlier. Renshaw is dirty. We've lost 3 operations because someone tipped the dealers off. That someone is him. But internal affairs can't get within 10 feet. We need a long play. You in? Mariah hadn't blinked. I'm already gone. Now she was Raina, an ex-bartender laid off during the pandemic, struggling to make rent in a duplex near the edge of Roosevelt Heights. She had fake pay stubs, utility bills, even a mouthy teenage cousin, another agent, Devin, posing as a recently paroled minor trying to avoid gang life. It was a full identity, built by the back office and delivered with surgical precision. But the rest? That was all Mariah. She unpacked groceries at 3 p.m. sharp every Tuesday so the neighbors could, accidentally, see her. She waved at the man who repaired bikes in his garage, nodded at the woman watering plants in a sports bra and slippers. She overpaid at the corner store and didn't ask for change. Raina was unremarkable, forgettable. That was her superpower. But she was also watching. Within 3 weeks, she had mapped the unofficial structure of the neighborhood. Tevin, a lanky 15-year-old with a fast mouth, ran low-level pills. Mrs. Irene, whose couch had plastic covers from the 70s, knew every cop's schedule without ever stepping off her porch. The guy who bagged groceries part-time whispered one night, "Don't look Renshaw in the eye. Man's got no soul." 2 months in, she saw him. Black SUV. Cigarette tucked between his lips. Dark sunglasses. He rolled up on a known dealer like he was checking on a buddy. Laughed. Took a small package through the driver's window. Didn't even fake a citation. Just tapped the roof, turned, and left. Mariah captured it all from a half-block away, her phone nestled in a cutout inside her canvas purse. That night, she uploaded the file to the encrypted DEA Dropbox. Subject: made contact with suspected dealer. No warrant. No paperwork. Physical exchange confirmed. But nothing came of it. Not immediately. Renshaw kept skating. Untouchable. Almost like he knew no one would challenge him. And that's when she knew, he did know. He wasn't operating alone. The deeper Mariah dug, the more names she gathered. Officer Benton, Renshaw's shadow, was always first to arrive at suspicious scenes, often before anything even happened. He'd flash lights, claim a fake radio call, then fade as Renshaw moved in. Officer Ruiz was quieter, but efficient. He filed reports, doctored timelines, and made sure nothing traceable ever surfaced. Still, Mariah played her part. She never confronted. Never challenged. Just watched. Until Renshaw noticed her. It was a simple day. Noon. She was walking home with a roll of paper towels when his SUV came up too fast and screeched against the curb. He stepped out. No badge, just a look. People scattered like rats when the lights flicked on. "You," he said, nodding at the roll in her arms. "Haven't seen you before." "Moved in a month ago," she answered. "You on Section 8? She blinked. "Maybe." He grinned. "Cute." Then he leaned in, too close. Close enough that she could smell stale nicotine and leather. "You see anything funny in this neighborhood, you come to me. Not the others." They don't handle it right. He tapped the paper towel roll. Gotta keep clean, right? Then he turned and walked away. Mariah stood there until the SUV vanished. Then she went home and uploaded the footage from the hidden camera in her necklace. Subject made unsolicited contact with undercover agent. Implied threat. Close range. Suggestive tone. The game had changed. Renshaw was circling her now. From that day on, the tension thickened. She caught a cruiser idling across the street, no reason, no radio chatter. Her trash can was dumped, only hers. Then came the coded message in a conversation between Benton and Ruiz she recorded from her hoodie's wire. You think she's police? Maybe. She don't act scared, though. You want me to follow her? Nah. Renshaw's gonna handle it. Mariah had seen fear before, in cartel lieutenants, in street kids running a dead man's phone, but this? This was something else. This was power abused without shame, protected by silence. She filed a report that night, compromise suspected. Surveillance threatened. Renshaw may be preparing intimidation maneuver. Her handler's reply came fast. Do not abort. You're close. We're watching too. But she was more than close. She was inside the storm. The knock at the door was soft, but deliberate. Mariah had already turned off the lights and muted the TV. Her cousin Devon, playing the role of a moody teenager in their cover story, was at a friend's house. Alone, Mariah stood near the window, barely breathing, peering through the blinds. There it was, a Fresno PD cruiser parked at the curb. No lights. No engine hum. Just waiting. Another knock. A pause. Then a voice, low and casual. Raina Lawson. Fresno PD, need a minute. Mariah didn't move. The silence between the knocks was louder than any siren. A full minute passed, and then came the sound of footsteps walking away. Then the slow creak of a car door, and the cruiser pulled off. She didn't breathe again until it turned the corner. That night, she slept with her service weapon on the table beside her badge and a half-finished report. She knew the game had changed. Renshaw wasn't just probing anymore, he was pushing. Testing how far he could go without triggering her fear. But fear wasn't the weapon he needed to worry about. 2 days later, the push got physical. Devon came home from the store with a busted lip and a shaken expression. He didn't need to explain, his posture said enough. But he did anyway, his voice shaking with fury. They grabbed me outside the store. 2 of them. No badges. No names. Just, arms. One of them whispered in my ear, tell your aunt to stop being curious. Then they tossed me out near the park. Mariah clenched her jaw. Not in panic, but in decision. She filed a level 3 alert with the DEA encrypted system that night. Subject escalating. Threatening federal assets. Recommend urgent review of timeline. Continue surveillance. Do not abort. The response from HQ came within the hour. We're watching too. Stay the course. But staying the course meant getting closer to the flame. And it was about to burn. A week later, Renshaw showed up again. This time, on her porch. No knock. No cruiser. Just footsteps. Mariah opened the door before he could test the handle. Morning, he said, chewing on a toothpick. You missed trash day. I'm good, she replied flatly. He leaned to the side, trying to glance past her into the living room. You seem tense lately. She stepped outside and shut the door behind her. If you're not here for a report or a warrant, we're done. He stared at her for a long moment, the smirk flickering, but not quite disappearing. Be careful who you talk to, he said quietly. You might end up saying something you can't take back. She didn't answer. Didn't flinch. just stared. He turned and walked away. That night, her back window was cracked, not shattered, not broken. Just sliced perfectly, cleanly across. Like someone wanted her to know, we can reach you any time. Mariah didn't call it in. Instead, she sat at her kitchen table, gun beside her, laptop open, and filed another report. But her fingers hovered over the keyboard longer than usual. Not because of fear. But because her instincts told her something else, he was close to making a mistake. And then, the opening came. It started with a whisper. A dealer named Deshaun Wynn, protected, slick, invisible on paper, was spotted 2 blocks away near an old train station. Mariah had been watching him for weeks. She knew his car, his habits. She'd captured him handing off burner phones, cash, sometimes bags. But this time, he was too casual. Too open. Mariah followed from a distance. The wind howled around the rusted fences of the station yard. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from focus. She parked on a side street, slid through a gap in the fence, and crouched low. What she saw made her chest tighten. Renshaw. Laughing. Holding a small black case. Deshaun handed him a stack of bills. Renshaw handed the case over like it was nothing. No patrol car. No body cam. No clipboard. Just business. Mariah recorded everything, from 2 angles. She uploaded the clip that night at 1 a.m. Direct exchange. Suspected bribery. No radio log. No uniform. But something changed after that. The next morning, her water was off. Just her unit. A fake maintenance tag was left on the valve. Property management had no record of a service call. And then Mr. Kingsley, the old man who usually ignored her, knocked on her door quietly. "You stay out of sight," he whispered. "They've been asking about you. Not the regular ones. The mean ones." She nodded. Thanked him. Locked the door. She knew she couldn't afford one misstep. But that same week, she got confirmation that Benton and Ruiz were watching her now. Not just wondering. Not just poking. Following. She caught a clip of Benton outside a burger stand, telling Ruiz, "She don't scare. You want me to trail her?" Ruiz had replied, "Nah. Renshaw's gonna handle it." Mariah knew then, she didn't have time to wait. She needed to set the trap. The air in Fresno turned sharp with October's chill, but Mariah hardly noticed anymore. Her days blurred into surveillance logs, encrypted uploads, quiet routes, and careful steps. Her nights were spent behind drawn blinds, laptop open, gun within reach. She had become part ghost, part hunter, and the hunted. But now, the trap was forming. Renshaw didn't know it yet, but he was circling closer to a finish line of his own making. Mariah had the footage. The money exchange. The threats. The intimidation. What she didn't have yet was the drop, the handoff where product, cash, and criminal implication all collided on camera. That was the moment her case needed. The undeniable proof that could hold up in federal court and withstand the defense team's smear playbook. And then, the message came. Her burner phone buzzed at 2:37 a.m. Blocked number. One line, "Meet me at the West Side Scrapyard. 11 p.m. Don't bring your cousin." She stared at it, the phone glowing in her palm. It wasn't an invitation. It was a dare. And she was ready. By midday, she met with Special Agent Corinne Vega, her closest contact at the Department of Justice's Internal Affairs Division. They didn't meet at HQ. They met at a rundown car wash where the water pressure didn't work and the vending machine dispensed warm soda. Mariah handed Vega a flash drive. "This has it all. Conversations. Payments. Footage. But not the final piece." Vega raised an eyebrow. And you're planning to get it alone? I'm not alone, Mariah said quietly. You'll be watching. 3 surveillance vans. 4 rotating agents. Hidden mics. Backup communications. Vega agreed to the setup but warned, if he twitches the wrong way, we end it. You don't play hero. Mariah nodded. But in her heart, she already knew, this wasn't about being a hero. It was about showing him the mirror. 11:03 p.m. West Side Scrapyard. The wind stirred bits of trash across gravel and rusted steel. Mariah's car rolled slowly between stacks of abandoned bumpers and scrap aluminum, her headlights cutting jagged shadows across the lot. She parked. Turned the engine off. Stepped out. No wire, 4. Mic in her bra strap. Lens in her glasses. Backups in her boots and belt buckle. Renshaw was already there. Standing under the flickering glow of a busted streetlight like a man who thought he owned every square inch of the shadows. You came, he said, smiling. Mariah didn't answer. Just closed her door and approached. You're not like the others, he said, voice smooth, the same way a knife glides across skin before it cuts. You don't scare easy. She stopped 4 feet away. You didn't call me here to flirt. No, he said, pulling a manila envelope from his coat. I called you here to offer something. She didn't move. This has names, he continued. Every officer who took a cut. Every dirty arrest. Every little bonus that slipped under IA's nose. You want in. This is how you stay in. She stared at the envelope but didn't take it. You think this makes you smart, she said. I think it makes me realistic, he replied. You play nice, Reina, or whoever you really are, and you'll live to see your pension. She stepped forward now, took the envelope slowly. And then she did something simple. She adjusted her glasses. 3 blocks away, Vega gave the signal. Headlights flared. Tires crunched gravel. Flashlights and voices roared from the dark. Fresno DEA. Hands in the air. Renshaw spun, but too late. 6 agents had weapons drawn. 2 tackled him to the ground before he could even protest. What the hell is this? Mariah stepped back, badge in hand. Special Agent Mariah Tillman. DEA. The look on Renshaw's face wasn't fear. It was betrayal. You, he whispered. You were a plant. No, she replied coldly. I was the consequence you never thought would show up. He didn't say another word as the cuffs clicked behind his back. The envelope, still sealed, was collected as evidence. Agents combed the scrapyard. Backup scanned for hidden phones or weapons. Mariah stood still, watching the entire thing without blinking. Because she knew, it wasn't over yet. The arrest was one thing. The real reckoning. That was coming in court. Courtrooms don't always echo with justice. Sometimes, they just hold space for people to pretend things are working. But not today. The moment Kyle Renshaw entered that courtroom in handcuffs, escorted by federal agents and stripped of his badge, the silence was electric. The smirk he once wore like a second uniform was gone. His gray suit was wrinkled now. His eyes darted, not in arrogance, but in calculation. He was trying to figure out where the trap had started, and how he had walked straight into it. Mariah Tillman was already seated at the witness stand. The same woman he'd once mocked. The same Reina he'd tried to intimidate with sideways smiles and midnight visits. But now, she wasn't wearing plain slacks and a frizzy wig. She was in a DEA suit. Her badge gleamed under the courtroom lights. Judge Kendrick adjusted his glasses, eyes narrowing. You're telling this court, he said slowly, that you are a federal agent who spent 8 months embedded in Roosevelt Heights as part of a covert DEA operation. Yes, Your Honor, Mariah said, voice calm. All activities and testimony provided today were coordinated with the Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office. A hush fell again. The prosecutor stood, flipping through a folder with deliberate control. "Agent Tillman," he said, "how many pieces of evidence do you currently have that implicate Detective Renshaw?" 92 video recordings, she replied. 74 audio clips. 12 witness statements. "And in your professional opinion, do these files show criminal behavior?" "Yes. Including bribery, evidence tampering, illegal search and seizure, abuse of authority, conspiracy to distribute narcotics, and the intimidation of a federal agent, myself." Someone in the second row gasped. Others turned toward Renshaw, who now sat very still, his hands gripping the defense table. "Let's play one of the videos," the prosecutor said. The monitor behind the judge lit up. There he was, Renshaw, laughing with Deshaun Wynn, accepting a stack of money. Another clip, Renshaw frisking a teenager without probable cause and pocketing cash. Another, Renshaw standing on Mariah's porch, leaning in and whispering, "You might end up saying something you can't take back." The courtroom didn't erupt. It froze. Even Judge Kendrick looked shaken. "Your Honor," the defense attorney finally spoke, face pale, "we object to the use of these recordings without proper vetting." "They've been vetted," the prosecutor snapped, "by federal investigators and internal affairs." Judge Kendrick raised a hand. "Objection noted. We'll review admissibility during pretrial motions. For now." He turned to Renshaw. "Detective Renshaw, you are hereby remanded into federal custody pending further investigation. You will be escorted from this courtroom immediately." The bailiff approached, cuffs already in hand. Renshaw didn't resist. But as he stood, he turned toward Mariah, his mouth twitching. "You were watching me this whole time." She stood, badge still in her hand. "I wasn't watching," she said evenly. "I was recording." The cuffs clicked. And just like that, the man who had ruled Roosevelt Heights with shadows and silence was walked out in full light. But it wasn't over. Mariah knew that Renshaw wasn't the disease, he was a symptom. And the next infection to cut out was still sitting in the courtroom. Benton and Ruiz. They hadn't been charged yet. But they had seen the videos. They had watched Renshaw fall. And they didn't laugh anymore. Mariah stared at them once before leaving. Not a threat. A warning. Outside, the courthouse steps were already filling with reporters. Shouts for statements. Microphones. Cameras flashing. Mariah didn't stop. She walked straight to Vega's waiting car and slid into the passenger seat. "You good?" Vega asked. "I will be," she replied. "But we're not done." Vega nodded. "The precinct's on lockdown. IA is pulling chat logs, bodycam uploads, every incident report for the last year. Benton and Ruiz will fold." "And win?" Mariah asked. "Already picked up this morning," Vega said. "He's flipping." Mariah didn't smile. She just stared out the window as the car pulled away. Because justice didn't end with an arrest. It ended when no one else could pick up where Renshaw left off. A week after the courtroom exploded, Roosevelt Heights felt quieter, but not because things had gone still. It was the kind of quiet that followed a storm. The kind of quiet where people looked each other in the eye again, just to see if the weight had lifted. Mariah came back, not in a badge or blazer, but in a hoodie and jeans. She wasn't there for another operation. She was there to close the loop. She walked the same blocks she used to watch from shadows. Past the liquor store. Past the auto yard where Renshaw made threats feel like handshakes. Past the park where her nephew, Devin, had once been dropped after being roughed up. The looks she got now weren't suspicious. They were different. Curious. Respectful. And beneath that, grateful. She stopped at Mrs. Irene's porch. The old woman was fanning herself with a bent church bulletin, same as always. But her eyes narrowed when she saw Mariah. Well, well, she muttered, not getting up. Look who made it back. Mariah smiled faintly. Had to finish what I started. Irene leaned back. Word is, that snake Renshaw got cuffed in front of a judge. He did. A long silence passed between them. Then Irene said softly, didn't think you'd still be standing. Neither did I, Mariah admitted. That was all that needed to be said. From there, Mariah walked to the community center. Renovations had finished. Fresh paint. New lights. Flyers for GED programs and job fairs taped to the windows. Inside, a familiar face caught her eye, Andre. The kid with the stubborn heart and too many questions. He sat at a desk, helping a younger boy sound out the words on a worksheet. He looked up. Surprised. Miss Reyna? Mariah walked over, her heart catching slightly. I thought you left, he said. I needed to come back. Just for a bit. He shifted in his chair. People said the cops were watching you. They were, she said honestly. But they're not anymore. Andre nodded, processing. You okay? I am, she said, and meant it. She handed him a folded slip of paper. Give this to your mom. It's a number she should call. A job program. Real one. He looked down at it like it was gold. You gonna come back? Mariah paused, then smiled. You know where to find me. As she left, she passed the same street corner where she first saw Renshaw's SUV mount the curb, his cigarette trailing smoke like a threat. The curb paint was still faded. The sidewalk still cracked. But it felt lighter now. Like the air itself had changed. Back in Vega's car, Mariah buckled in. You done? Vega asked. For now. You sure you want that transfer? You could stay. Promotion's waiting. Mariah looked out the window. I've seen enough shadows for one career. I want to work somewhere I can see the daylight. Vega smiled faintly. Well, you left your mark. Mariah's eyes stayed fixed outside as they pulled away. I didn't come here to save the neighborhood, she said softly. I came to hold one man accountable. But if someone out here walks a little taller now, maybe that's enough. Back at headquarters, Internal Affairs had launched full proceedings against Benton and Ruiz. Their files were thick with doctored reports, skipped citations, and mysteriously missing evidence. At least 4 other officers were now under active review. Deshaun Wynn's deal crumbled in real time. Faced with overwhelming evidence, he gave up every name, route, stash point, and dropped contact tied to the web Renshaw had built. It was a house of cards. And it was falling. But for Mariah, justice wasn't a gavel. It was quieter. It was watching Andre help another kid with homework without flinching every time the door creaked open. It was seeing Irene sleep with her porch light off. It was knowing the silence that had protected Renshaw for years had finally cracked. 1 week after her final report was filed, Mariah Tillman stood in front of her bathroom mirror, not as Reyna Lawson, not as the woman in a wig and oversized slacks, but as herself. Her curls were loose. Her skin was bare. Her eyes were tired, but clear. She didn't look like a warrior. She looked like a woman who had carried something heavy, and set it down. The badge sat beside her toothbrush. Her DEA credential case, weathered from 8 months in and out of bags and back pockets, lay folded shut. She hadn't touched it since the day Renshaw was let out in cuffs. She thought briefly about requesting desk duty. Maybe Sacramento. Maybe even Washington. A quieter life. But that wasn't who she was. A week later, Mariah stood before a room of wide-eyed recruits at the DEA field office in Sacramento. Young agents, fresh out of training, sat with notepads and clean uniforms, ready to be told the rules. She didn't start with procedures. She didn't talk about chain of command or paperwork. She just looked at them and said, "You're going to meet people with badges who use them for power, not protection. You might admire them. You might want to be them. Until they show you who they really are." She paused, scanning the room. "And when they do, you've got a choice: look the other way, or do something." One trainee raised a hand. "What if doing something means risking everything?" Mariah nodded. "Then you ask yourself what it's worth to stay silent." Afterward, a younger agent stopped her in the hallway. "You're the one who took down Renshaw, right?" Mariah offered a tired smile. "I didn't take him down. He built his own fall. I just made sure someone was watching." That night, she sat at her kitchen table, no files, no drives, no surveillance equipment. Just a notepad. She wrote a letter. It was addressed to Renshaw. But she never intended to send it. "You tried to scare me out of seeing the truth. You thought power meant no one would challenge you. You were wrong. And I want you to know, someone is out there right now, watching the next version of you. You'll never see them coming either." She folded the letter. Slid it into a drawer. And then she stood on her balcony, coffee in hand, as the sun dipped below the rooftops. Kids played in the street below. A grill smoked across the lot. Laughter carried over worn fences. Life went on. And Mariah knew, this wasn't the end of corruption. It wasn't the end of abuse or broken systems. But it was something. One man off the street. One silence broken. One community reminded they weren't invisible. Because justice didn't always come with headlines. Sometimes it came in the form of a woman sitting quietly in the back of a courtroom, waiting for the exact right moment to pull out a badge, and change everything. Some stories don't need explosions. They need truth. Mariah Tillman's story reminds us that justice can come slowly, quietly, but when it arrives, it speaks with undeniable weight. You don't fight corruption by screaming into the dark. You do it by standing in the middle of it, with your eyes open. If this story moved you, share it. Let it remind someone that their silence doesn't have to be permanent. Subscribe to True Echo for more powerful, emotional stories based on truth, grit, and justice. Your voice matters. Be the echo.